When I was little, I often went through nights filled with anxiety and confusion because of my brother Ethan's strange behavior. On random nights throughout the month without any clear pattern, he would quietly enter my room. His footsteps were soft but haunting, as if he was trying not to let anyone in the house notice. He would sit on the edge of my bed where I lay curled up in my blanket and use his two large hands to cover my mouth tightly. I still vividly remember the suffocating feeling as my breathing was restricted, only able to inhale through my nose with difficulty. His hands were cold, slightly trembling, but always held with a firm grip, as if he feared that letting go would lead to something terrible. This would go on for hours, or at least that's how it felt to me. Time seemed to stand still in the darkness of the room, with only the sound of his steady breathing and the pounding of my heart in my chest. Finally, when I was exhausted from fear and suffocation, he would stand up, say nothing, and leave the room as if he had never been there. The door would close with a soft click, leaving me in a state of confusion and unanswered questions. This behavior repeated many times throughout my childhood years, and despite my efforts to understand, I never truly grasped the reason behind his strange actions. As I grew older, I started to think about possible reasons that could explain Ethan's behavior. One thought that crossed my mind was that perhaps he was doing this to protect me from our parents' arguments. Our house wasn't always peaceful. The sound of shouting, the back and forth accusations between my parents often echoed through the night, piercing the thin walls of our old house. I thought that maybe Ethan didn't want me to hear those harsh words, that he was trying to shield me in his own clumsy way. But deep down I felt that reason was too simple, not enough to explain the obsession in his eyes every time he entered my room. My curiosity grew stronger, like a smoldering fire that couldn't be extinguished. I decided I had to find out the truth. I began observing every move Ethan made, watching every small detail in how he moved, how he talked to our parents, how he avoided my gaze whenever I tried to ask about those strange nights. I also paid attention to our parents, hoping to find some clue. I spent most of my free time at home doing this, sneaking around like an amateur detective I'd seen on TV. I noted their habits, their passing conversations, and anything that seemed out of the ordinary. But after weeks, I found nothing significant. The only thing unusual was Ethan coming into my room, covering my mouth and leaving without explanation. The frustration grew within me, mingling with my burning curiosity. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch, driving me to keep going. I started practicing skills I thought a real detective would need, moving quietly, so no one could hear, listening to the smallest sounds in the house and observing everything with care. I learned to walk without making the old wooden floor creak, to stand behind walls to eavesdrop on my parents' conversations. Each night I lay in bed pretending to sleep, but actually waiting, hoping to catch some clue. One night I decided to go further. I knew Ethan would be out at a party with friends and wouldn't be home. This was the perfect chance to explore his room. I had once heard him mention a spare key hidden under a flower pot outside his door. With my heart pounding, I quietly retrieved the key, the cold metal in my hand, feeling like a warning. I opened his door and stepped inside with all the caution I could muster. Ethan's room was pitch dark, with only the faint light from a street lamp outside filtering through the window. Everything seemed normal. The bed neatly made, a few books on the desk, and the familiar scent of his cologne still lingering. But then my eyes were drawn to something on his desk, a laptop, its screen glowing in the darkness. A video was paused, displaying an image that made my heart nearly stop. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity won. I approached the laptop, my hands trembling as they touched the keyboard. I pressed play, and what appeared on the screen changed everything. The video showed a man tied tightly to a chair in a stark white room, not a shred of clothing on him. His face was contorted with fear, his eyes wide, pleading. A masked person entered the frame holding a chainsaw. Another person appeared carrying a sledgehammer. I wanted to stop to run away, but my body felt frozen. The man's screams rang out as if they came from the depths of hell. Blood splattered everywhere, staining the white room red. I saw his fingers and toes fall to the floor, pieces of his body being torn apart. The sound of bones breaking and flesh being ripped was so clear, so real, it couldn't be fake. I hit the stop button, ran out of the room and rushed to the bathroom where I vomited violently. My breathing was rapid, my mind reeling with the horrific images I'd just seen. I couldn't understand why Ethan would watch something like that. Was it a movie? But those screams, those terrifying sounds, were too real, too vivid to be the work of a director. I sat curled up in the bathroom trying to make sense of my thoughts, but fear and confusion overwhelmed me. The next morning, I decided to tell my father everything. I led him to Ethan's room, pointed at the laptop, and recounted what I had seen. My father's face changed instantly from calm to tense, as if he was trying to hide something. But then he regained his composure and told me it was just a documentary Ethan was researching for a school assignment. He emphasized that it was made to look as real as possible, which was why it was so horrifying. I asked repeatedly, but he stuck to that explanation, his voice firm but his eyes avoiding mine. After that conversation, Ethan stopped coming into my room to cover my mouth. Before, he would do it at least once every 2 months, but now the behavior stopped completely. I felt relieved, but at the same time, a new sense of unease began to creep in. I couldn't erase the horrific images of the video from my mind, and I started to suspect that something was being hidden in our own home. Tonight, everything changed again. I couldn't sleep, my mind swirling with chaotic thoughts. I was in the bathroom washing my face to calm myself when I heard a knock on the door. Ethan entered my room calling my name. I didn't answer, standing silently in the dark bathroom, my heart pounding. He lifted the blanket, looked under the bed, then shouted, "She's not here. She's probably out with friends." From downstairs, my father's voice rang out cold and clear. "Good, let's proceed." When Ethan left the room, I quietly stepped out of the bathroom, opened my bedroom door, and watched his figure descend the stairs. I decided to follow each step, careful, my heart beating so hard it felt like it might explode. But when I reached the ground floor, both Ethan and my father had vanished. Suddenly a faint scream echoed from somewhere in the house, sending a chill down my spine. I wandered around trying to find the source of the sound, and finally realized it was coming from the basement. The basement door was locked as always. I thought I should go back to my room and sleep, but curiosity and fear drove me to keep going. I found a crowbar in my father's tool cabinet and began prying open the basement door. The creaking of the wood echoed in the darkness, each sound like a warning. Finally, the door gave way and I stepped down the stairs, each step bringing me closer to a terrifying truth. The screams grew louder and clearer, as if they were coming from the basement walls themselves. I looked around, but the basement was empty with only dusty old shelves. Then I noticed a patch of white behind a shelf in the corner. With all my strength, I pushed the shelf aside, revealing a white door I had never seen before. My heart felt like it would leap out of my chest as I placed my hand on the doorknob. From inside, my father's voice rang out cold and cruel. "Tonight you'll die, you wretch. I'll stand in for God to punish your sins." A woman's voice responded, weak and desperate. "Please, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't committed any sins. Please let me go." Her cries and screams echoed as if tearing through the air. I wanted to burst in to stop them, but fear rooted my feet to the floor. Suddenly a hand covered my mouth from behind. I knew immediately it was Ethan. He pulled me back down the stairs toward the white door. As he dragged me, he whispered in my ear, his voice icy, "Don't make a sound or things will get worse." I struggled, but his strength overpowered me. The white door loomed closer, and I knew I was approaching a truth I might never have wanted to face.